I need to apologize to y'all because I've been talking about what is happening and not enough about what is being done. So here's how people are fighting back in spite of all of this chaos. Legalization for All, MIRAC, Central CSO, and other groups around the country have been protesting for the last few weeks, demanding an end to mass deportations. There have been rallies with thousands of people, school walkouts, and business closures in protests. These are happening in LA, Dallas, Minneapolis, Colorado, Jacksonville, and more, with more cities protesting this weekend. In Washington, D.C., Benjamin Netanyahu's visit was met with protests. They let him know that the Palestine solidarity movement is strong and they are not going anywhere. The Union for the Federal Workers, AFGE, alongside AFSCME, is promising to fight against Trump's illegal orders. They're taking him to court and they're standing up for their workers. Parents are suing to fight against Trump's executive order that strips healthcare from transgender minors. The city of Baltimore and others are suing Trump to block his anti-diversity efforts. Trump's executive order repealing birthright citizenship is being challenged in court by multiple entities. There are people that are continuing to fight back. There were protests the day of his inauguration by the National Alliance, by SDS, and by the Freedom Road Socialist Organization. People have been organizing since day one and since before this term, okay? We are not waiting on any entity, any political party, any savior to come and save us. We are actively and collectively working together to save ourselves. So I promise from here on out, I will do a better job at reporting what is being done alongside what is happening. Here's everything that happened while we were asleep. So the CIA offers a buyout to its employees. USPS suspends package service from China as Trump's tariffs kick in, which may affect your Shein and Temu packages. Detroiters rally outside of ICE headquarters. Aurora protests and condemns Trump's demands for mass deportations, and then they're demanding protections for immigrants. Mass deportation efforts are underway with some undocumented immigrants being taken to the U.S.'s torture facility, Guantanamo Bay. Trump claims the U.S. will try to take over Gaza. Resistance forces and other nations condemned any forced displacement of Palestinian people. The student walkouts in East LA are underway, with thousands of students joining the walkout to demand an end to the mass deportations. More cities to follow suit. 1 dead, 5 injured in a shooting at an Ohio cosmetics warehouse as police search for the suspect. Joe Biden signs with a talent agency. Apple shares fall 3% in pre-market after China reportedly considers a probe into App Store practices. A loophole in FDA regulations is making us all sick. The FDA allows companies to independently determine whether certain ingredients are safe. That's reviewed by a panel which has 100% conflict of interest in the outcome. One approved ingredient sent 39 people to the ER. Trump is exploring options to outsource U.S. prisons to other countries like El Salvador. The Senate confirms Pam Bondi as Attorney General. Proud Boys lose their trademark to a black church that they vandalized. Home buyer and mortgage demand drops further, which is a troubling sign for the spring market. Target is sued by shareholders over its DEI abandonment. And that's everything you missed while you were asleep. I know some people probably don't want to hear this, but Trump isn't proposing anything new when it comes to the forced displacement of Palestinian people. Wait. People are rightfully disgusted by Trump's proposal to displace Palestinians to neighboring Arab countries and his plan for the U.S. to take part in the rebuilding of Gaza. Some argue that Arab and Muslim voters, who make up a small share of the electorate, are now effing around and finding out. But if we take a closer look, Trump isn't introducing anything new. He's simply continuing U.S. foreign policy. Trigger warning, we will be examining the facts. I know that can be difficult for some of us, so let's just break it down. What was actually proposed, what it means, and who is behind it. Let's just start with the Biden and Harris administration. Get it out the way. In the early weeks of the genocide, the Biden administration pushed for Egypt and Jordan to accept Palestinian refugees. They pressured Egypt to support a mass exodus from Gaza, but Egypt refused. As part of a $105 billion aid package, the administration requested funding for the potential needs of Gazans fleeing to neighboring countries, which essentially just means mass displacement. And why were Palestinians fleeing in the first place? Well, because they were being bombarded with U.S.-made weapons. Biden's plans included tent cities in Egypt, which would eventually become permanent settlements that were funded by the state of Israel, a buffer zone in Egypt to prevent displaced Palestinians from returning to Gaza. Both Egypt and Jordan rejected these proposals, standing firm against forced displacement. Protests erupted across the globe, demanding an independent Palestinian state instead of mass displacement. At the same time, Biden's team positioned the U.S. for heavy involvement in post-war Gaza, because it's a genocide. According to Politico, the administration considered appointing a U.S. official as a top civilian advisor after a ceasefire. The U.S. planned to install a director general to coordinate with Israel, train local forces, and provide intelligence support, essentially ensuring that any governance would still be under U.S. and Israeli influence. Now, let's turn to the administration that's actually currently in power. Trump is demanding Egypt and Jordan accept a mass exodus of Palestinians. Just like before, these countries refused, instead calling for an independent Palestinian state. Just like before, Trump is also pushing for U.S. involvement in the rebuilding of Gaza if the ceasefire holds. According to NPR, Trump stated during a White House press conference with Netanyahu, the U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip. However, he provided no specifics on how this would be executed. His proposals have been met with fierce resistance from Arab and Palestinian leaders who have long saw Gaza and the West Bank as a foundation for the Palestinian state. Protests have already erupted in Washington, D.C., with more expected to take place. After looking beyond the headlines, one thing is clear. Trump is continuing an existing U.S. policy. For Palestinians, his comments are just business as usual, and they will continue to fight against mass displacement. But here's what no one is really talking about. This isn't just a Biden-Harris or Trump-Vance policy. This is a U.S. foreign policy. The playbook remains the same. Bomb, starve, and demolish nations, and then push for mass displacement. If displacement succeeds, the U.S. swoops in to rebuild the very places they destroyed in the first place, patting themselves on the back as the so-called heroes. Trump's plan is a continuation of U.S. policy, and it will be met with resistance and disgust, as it should be. Here's everything you missed while we were on the clock. So the new head of the USAID reportedly stormed the Capitol on January 6th. Democratic Representative Al Green brings the first articles of impeachment against Trump. Donald Trump is expected to sign an executive order today, which would prohibit transgender women from competing in women's sports. Another federal judge, so the second one, blocks Trump's executive order to end birthright citizenship. Another judge blocks a federal prison system from moving 3 transgender women to men's prisons, and this is under Trump's executive order. Rubio said that Trump's Gaza takeover comments were not meant as hostile. Netanyahu gave Trump a golden pager in reference to the Lebanon attacks, and he called it a great operation. Keep in mind, it killed a 10-year-old girl and injured thousands of people. Israel's West Bank assault continues. They displaced 26,000 people from Jenin and Tulkarem camps. Residents have been forced to flee under the siege, and homes are being destroyed. Water and electricity are being cut off. Jordan says that it's ready for war with Israel if Palestinians are expelled into its territory. Saudi Arabia, in a swift response to Trump, says no ties with Israel without a Palestinian state. There's a bill that would allow schools to opt out of enrolling undocumented students. West Point disbands student clubs that are related to gender and race. Democrats sue GOP county executive over armed volunteer unit that they believe amounts to an illegal militia. Oof. Thousands of people protest the Trump administration's policies in cities across the United States. USPS reverses its decision to suspend packages from China and Hong Kong. Things are about to get way more expensive under Trump, according to Mattel, which makes Barbie. A suspect has been apprehended after a deadly shooting at a manufacturing facility. A Jacksonville Beach man cites being a sovereign citizen as justification for arson in a national forest. A judge tosses the last charge against the ex-prosecutor accused of misconduct in the Ahmaud Arbery case. Argentina says that it will pull out of the World Health Organization. So that's everything that happened while we were on the clock. Happy day 5 of Black History Month. Today we honor and celebrate Hiram Rhodes Revels. Mr. Hiram Rhodes Revels made history on February 25th, 1870, when he became the first African-American U.S. Senator. Mr. Hiram Rhodes Revels was born free in North Carolina in 1827. Revels defied the odds by pursuing education in Indiana, Ohio, and Illinois. He became a minister, preaching to both free and enslaved Black communities and secretly helping those escaping slavery. During the Civil War, Revels helped recruit Black soldiers for the Union Army and worked to educate freed African Americans. In 1870, the Mississippi legislature chose Revels to fill a vacant U.S. seat. Funny enough, y'all, this was the same seat once held by that monster, Jefferson Davis. Hate him. Some senators opposed seating him, arguing that Black Americans hadn't been U.S. citizens for the required 9 years. However, his supporters, including abolitionist Charles Sumner, fought back. The Senate ultimately voted 48-8 in favor of Revels. During his short term in the Senate, 1870 to 1871, Revels fought for racial equality, opposed segregation, and pushed for educational opportunities for Black Americans. After leaving Washington, he returned home to Mississippi and became president of Alcorn College, continuing his mission of uplifting his community. Revels paved the way for future Black politicians, proving that Black leadership in America was not only possible but necessary. His courage and service remain an inspiration today. Today, we honor and celebrate Hiram Rhodes Revels. Stay tuned to see who we honor tomorrow.